Good afternoon. We are back again. Finally done with the Sermon on the Mount. Finally done with chapter 7, and we're moving into chapter 8. Now, as we ended last time, we're in a section that is going to be dealing a lot with highlighting the authority of Jesus and his, the works that he was doing during this time period. And so Matthew set us up. We're moving on, and we're going to have basically right now a series of miracles, mostly healings, but it's a series of miracles that are really going to be used towards establishing who Jesus is, establishing his unique authority, and just getting the ball rolling. There's going to be a couple firsts that happen within these next sections and a few other things. One of the things, pardon me, you're gonna notice that is missing, but is going to start appearing later on in the gospel, is the idea of confrontation. Um, Jesus does address a few things that are confrontational, but there hasn't been any backlash yet from religious leaders. That hasn't started. That conflict hasn't really started yet. They're still just trying to figure Jesus out. They're trying to figure out what's going on. In some ways, he's kind of the latest fad, so to speak, within the first century context. And so they're just there. They're checking him out. They're listening to him. They're seeing he's gaining popularity, but they haven't really set themselves against him yet, at least within the narrative of Matthew. So that's where we're at, and we're going to have all these miracles that are going to happen before another course of dialogue. And we start off with some surprises with who Jesus is coming in contact with, who is responding to Jesus in a very favorable fashion. And so these are people that you just don't expect. The first is he's coming down from the mountain as a leper, and then he's got a centurion, and these aren't people you expect. But anyhow, to our text. Matthew 8, verses 1 through 4. When he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him, and behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand, touching him and saying, I will, be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them. Okay, so here we are. Jesus is coming down off the mountain. He's been teaching, he's been preaching all these wonderful things, and as he's coming down, a great crowd is following him. So there are a large number of people. And then Matthew goes, Behold! This is the equivalent of, yo, look, check this out. Pay attention. Or surprise a surprise. In this great crowd, there's a leper. Which is a bit of a surprise because there were some strict rules regarding leprosy in those days. Both from a temple standpoint and just also from a societal standpoint. Lepers are a group of people who suffer from a rather nasty skin disease. The popular lore is their bodies rotting. That's not quite true. But they do get these really nasty sores all over their skin. It's oozy. It's yucky, and it's also very contagious, particularly if you're not bathing regularly and you're constantly exposed to it. It's a nasty little bug. But during those days, before they had, the fine points of microbiology figured out and pathology and all that kind of good stuff, they solved it in the simplest fashion possible. When the uncleanness becomes apparent, you cut them off from society. Lepers were outcasts, and the laws reflected that, and the temple laws also reflected that. Um, and part of the temple laws, well, yeah, we could say, well, they were to help the people stay healthy, but also leprosy was a visible reminder of the fall and of humanity's sinful condition, and as a part of establishing the idea that we can't make the perfect sacrifice because we ourselves are eternally stained, lepers were considered ceremonially unclean, and so they could not be a part of society. They also could not be a part of the sacrificing community. And so there was all these laws set up around determining leprosy and also figuring when the person to become clean. There was the idea a leper could be cured. And so we actually will see in Leviticus there are rules for the priest in determining whether or not the leprosy has been cured, that it's been cleaned out. But here we are. We're in the midst of this crowd, and there's this leper, which is going to be unusual. Lepers were not supposed to be where people were. In fact, it was the tradition of the day that lepers had to carry a bell with them or some sort of noisemaker that they had to rattle whenever they're coming into town so that people would know that there's a leper there and they would avoid them so that they didn't risk becoming unclean themselves. So to have this leper in the middle of these crowds listening to Jesus is unusual. And then to have a leper come to Jesus is also unusual because the holy people of those days, the priest, the scribes, the Pharisees, they weren't going to have anything to do with the leper because to touch the leper would make them unclean. So to have all of this coming together, it's a reason for Matthew to go, behold, check this out. Here comes a leper. And then, surprises, surprises, this outcast, this leper, this non-entity in society acknowledges Jesus' authority. And look how he comes and he talks to Jesus. Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. That is a bold statement of faith. This is a statement of, I recognize you for who you are. You, and he is within these words recognizing the authority of Jesus. That not only is he a master teacher, but he also does have the authority to do things like clean a leper. And this isn't if you can do it. This is, I know you can do it. I'm only asking, are you willing to do it? That is a statement of acknowledging authority. So this is a continuation to some extent of what Matthew has already noted, that the crowds were amazed because Jesus had taught as one of authority. Here we have a leper whom the teaching had touched, and he expresses and confesses Jesus' authority when he asks Jesus to to cleanse him. And so we have a wonderful confession here. And Jesus goes and responds, okay, I'll do it. I will. Be clean. As he reaches out and he touches this leper. So we have a reciprocal response, acknowledging the confession. Really, it's pretty much a clear-cut parallel. If you will, I will. And so we have that just right next to each other. So the acknowledgement of the confession and the compassionate touch of Jesus, which not only extends to the leper a personal connection, acknowledgement of you're a person. It also extends the healing that he has the authority to do. So, and this is a great act of compassion that we get to witness. And the leper, he he's healed. I mean, this horrible disease that had cut him out from society, that had cut him off from his family, that had cut him off from everything an Israelite, a Jewish person, is going to hold dear, is gone just by touch. And then Jesus follows up with what could be a perplexing command. See that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them. Now, this is going back to the Levitical laws that Jesus is taking them to, but the whole idea that part makes sense. But the whole idea of don't go and say anything to anybody, that has perplexed people. And if you make the it's not really a mistake, but if you make the leap too soon to Mark, you're going to cloud your understanding of this passage to some extent. And the reason I say this is because Mark sets up this whole mystery of who is this man. And so Jesus is constantly telling people, don't tell anybody, don't say anything to anybody. It's a secret. Okay, now that's Mark. That's not necessarily Matthew, and we're trying to understand Matthew on Matthew's terms right now. So we don't want to take and bring Mark in here and superimpose him and say that Jesus is establishing that divine secret. That's Mark's thing, not so much Matthew's thing. So likely what we have is a continuation of Jesus's compassion upon this leper. Not so much a let's keep it all a secret just between you and me. It's actually is like reminding the guy you still have some things to do, and I want to see you back in as a part of the people as soon as possible, because until the leper showed himself to the priest and was declared clean by the priest and made the gift of offering, he was not a part of society. He was still cut off. And Jesus is reminding this guy who's just been cleaned and is probably seriously excited to go back straight to Jerusalem and show yourself to the priest so that everything's taken care of. Make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Because, I mean, seriously, you have had this disease for who knows how long. You've been cut off from society, friends, family, and all those wonderful things. What's likely going to be your first reaction? To run home and tell somebody. So Jesus is saying, look, you know, take care of the details, and then you can go talk to people. Basically, he's acting in compassion. Make sure that he follows through with what has been established around with the temple and the laws, and make sure you are integrated back into society. And you'll hear some of this similar talk within the recovery community, where they're talking. You got to go make sure you take care of everything so that you don't have stuff coming up that disrupts everything. And because if the leper hadn't taken care of these things, life was going to get disrupted because he didn't do what he was supposed to. So we're just reminding him, look, you still got some things to go back to do, and make sure you go do it. Now, if you're curious, the passages that Jesus is reminding this particular person of can be found in Leviticus chapter 14. That is where the laws for the lepers are laid out, and how the priest is supposed to interact with the leper, how he's supposed to diagnose the leprosy, and how he's supposed to figure out has the leprosy left the person. So I'm not going to take us back there today just simply for time's sake, but I would encourage you on your own, go back, look it up so you can see what is going on here and what would have been in effect during those days that Jesus was doing his ministry. So, I mean, it's good background information. It's interesting to know. At least I found it interesting. But we're not going to spend a lot of time going back today to Leviticus 14. That's something you can do on your own and do fairly well. It's a pretty straightforward passage. You can get a little lost in the descriptions, but it's pretty straightforward. So, all right, moving on, we have another healing that happens in Matthew 8:5 through 13. And again, this is another behold moment, even though Matthew doesn't say behold at this point, but it's still a surprising incident. Because first you got the leper, an outcast. Now you get somebody who isn't even an Israelite. You've got a Roman centurion coming forward to Jesus. And let's hear what happens when the centurion comes forward. And when he had entered Capernaum, speaking about Jesus, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me, and I say to one, Go, and he goes, and to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, Truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from the east and west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And to the centurion Jesus said, Go, let it be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed at that very moment. Okay, this passage really is a pastor's nightmare and dream at the same time, for the same reason. What topic do you pick to preach on? Because there's a lot going on here. First, we've got the surprise of a centurion coming forward to Jesus and acknowledging him for who he is. Because this is a Gentile. This isn't a person who's grown up and learned the prophecies and taking them in with his milk. This is a person who came from a pagan people. But we're hearing words of faith from him. Within the Gospel of Matthew, this is a first indication of the idea that Jesus isn't just for the Jewish people, that there is more going on. And so we have this surprising person coming forward, and on top of that, recognizing Jesus's authority. And so we have again a great confession. Lord, which is a recognition of who Jesus is, of a person of authority, and then we have a continuation of that recognition by the statement, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. Now, there are a couple ways to take um, Jesus's response to the initial request. A lot of translations are going to translate it as a positive action statement. I will come and heal him. The grammar can lean towards you want me to come, or should I come? Jesus responding with a question, almost as if he's digging for more information. But then the centurion responds with the confession of, I'm not worthy, but if you just speak the word, my servant will be healed. And so we have an escalation of the confession of Jesus's authority, and also somebody who recognizes to the extent at which authority can apply. Here's a good military man who understands the word of command, and his eyes have been open to the word of command that Jesus can speak. If you just say the word, it's going to happen. And it's like when I say the word and it happens with my folks. And so we have a fantastic interplay showing the authority of Jesus, and also it shows us a different way that Jesus's authority plays out. It's not just through him touching and doing so. His authority happens because he speaks. Things he says, and things happen. This is important. This plays out today. And we can look at this. He says it, and it's done. And we can say the same thing with I take the Lord's Supper, where he says, this is my body. We can say he has the authority to say, this is my body, and so we believe that it is his body. And so I'm not saying that this is a direct, yay, let's prove communion from this passage, but it does lay some of the groundwork by the acknowledgement and the demonstration that just by speaking, Jesus can make something so. And so we have a confession that says it, and then we have Jesus do it. We also have a rare insight into it. Jesus's internal monologue as he turns to his disciples in just utter amazement. Truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. And so this is spectacular news. I don't think Jesus was surprised. He is God, he knows all things. But it is a marvelous thing to hear those whom he is going to be calling already responding. We're hearing the words of his authority and are being led to him in faith. And it also gives him a moment to speak basically a word of warning, and also an word of explanation, because he in his marveling as he's talking to his disciples, he does continue with, many will come from east and west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. The Gentiles are going to respond. the people from all the corners of from all the world are going to be hearing his words, and they're going to be responding. There's going to be faith created in people who are not the physical sons of Abraham. Pardon me. And so there's kind of an end times thrust that's happening also with this miracle, with this statement of faith. And part of that is well, just because you can trace your line back to Abraham doesn't mean you're going to sit at the feast in the end of days. You're going to be one of the ones cast out. The weeping and gnashing of teeth is a common imagery that Matthew uses to depict those who are not a part of the reign of heaven, who are cast with Satan and all of his demons into the lake of fire. So it is a image of the punishment to those who have rejected Jesus, who have committed that blaspheme against the Holy Spirit and said, I don't need Jesus, I don't need his forgiveness. So that is where Jesus is bringing this. He's going, look at this Gentile. This is proof of what is to come. Also, to you who are of the lineage of Abraham, let this be a warning. Just because you are a son and daughter of Abraham doesn't mean you are a part of the reign of heaven. The reign of heaven is something else. The reign of heaven is my grace. And now, of course, I'm elaborating at this point, but at this point, we have that warning. But this is going to come out, the reign, and is already coming out. The reign of heaven isn't a physical kingdom. It isn't bound to physical lineage. It is bound in the grace of God in Christ Jesus. So, and as proof of this, Jesus turns to the centurion and says, go, it's done just as you have believed. And Matthew records for us that at that moment the servant was healed. Now, some translations are going to mark it as in that hour. Please understand, within the Greek, within the hour it's pretty much a statement, and it happened right then. So. And so that's a way that we can, it's pretty good to understand it. So when Jesus said it, it happened. And I'm sure that got around, because Jesus, he throws the long ball. He throws the deep pass on this one, because he's nowhere near this person, and he says it's done. He doesn't even have to be in the same physical location. But that's the power of his word. And so not only can he do the handoff, put his hand on you and clean you, he can throw the long ball. So he's got all the tools. And yes, it's football season, so I'm thinking in football metaphors. If you don't like football, well, nobody's perfect, but bear with me. Anyhow, we're gonna end it there with Jesus throwing the touchdown pass and healing the centurion's servant. And next week we're gonna move in to with Peter and his house and his mother-in-law, and see what Jesus does there. Until then, God bless and have a good week.